Welcome to Nachsimanim. I'm Jacob Thomas, and today we will be learning melachim aleph, perek chaf aleph. We begin this perek where Achav wants to continue expanding his kingdom, and he sees the beautiful vineyard in Yisrael, not to be confused with Israel, right next to his winter palace, and a man named Navot owns it. Achav offers to swap it for an even better vineyard, even better property, but Navot doesn't want to give it up. He says, "This is the land that I have as my inheritance from my forefathers. I don't want to give it up." And Achav from this is just so displeased. He is just questioning himself. Why does the man want to hurt his empire? Why does the man want to keep on to some silly little property because of some silly little tradition? And he retreats to his bread and doesn't want to eat food. Now, his wife, Izebel, sees this and says, "You control all of Israel. Go eat bread. I'll get you this vineyard." So she then creates an entire scheme, signing in the name of Achav, where she's gonna get Navot to go and do some public position in front of the people, hire two corrupt men to sit next to him during this public festival, and they're going to testify against him that he cursed in the name of God and in the name of King. This then happens, and he's dragged outside and stoned falsely. And because of this, great, the king now has the property of Navot, but in the process killed an innocent man. Upon learning this, Izebel goes and tells Achav to go take the property. He then goes and claims the property as his garden plot. Eliyahu Navi hears this, and he intercepts the king at the vineyard. And he asks, "Have you killed a person and then also took his property? You're putting a nail in the coffin? How horrible can you be?" And then curses Achav, saying, "In the place where dogs lick the blood of Navot, dogs will lick your blood." Because Navot was killed in public, therefore dogs would come and kill him, and lick his blood and eat it, to not get too graphic, but do what dogs do. And mida keneged mida, measure for measure, that same thing will happen to Achav. And he's cursing him that the most horrible punishment after death, a disgrace of the body, will happen to Achav. And Eliyahu pronounces this doom over the royal dynasty, how Achav's house will be completely wiped out. And on hearing this, Achav realizes throughout his entire kingship, he has tried to bring up the people, bringing in all of this horrible avodah zarah to try to bring the people and be economically well off, thinking that it's Eliyahu and it's these rules that are bringing people back, stopping him from creating his empire. But then at the end, his wife, I'm adding some interpretation from what I've learned in school, he realized that the wife that he brought in to bring economic goodness into his kingdom is the exact person that leads to him killing an innocent person. So after seeing Eliyahu was right all along, Achav repents, and he realizes that his whole philosophy was wrong, and that to create an economically well-off society that is also moral, you need God. So Achav repents. As a recap, we have Navot's refusal to sell his vineyard to Achav. We have the horrible Izebel, who creates an entire framing against Navot, leading to his stoning. We have the rebuke of Eliyahu to Achav, asking, "Have you murdered a person and also taken his land?" And we have the teshuvah of Achav after this rebuke, which in some ways is similar to the tshuva of David, who David killed Bathsheba's husband and then took Bathsheba for a wife. And then the Navi comes saying you did wrong, and David repents. Achav now killed a person and took his property. Not exactly the same thing as a wife, but same idea. And the prophet comes saying, how could you do this? And he repents, leading for God to forgive him. And Hashem will not destroy Achav, but will destroy the dynasty with his kids, because they'll inevitably continue doing this horrible avodah zarah. Perek Chaf Aleph, in which we use a car, because Bostonians pronounce car as ka. Here's what the semen. Achav puts Navod's vineyard in the trunk of his car and drives away from the pantry. So this reminds us how in this perek we have Navod's vineyard, and Achav is taking over Navod's vineyard, and Achav's wife, Izebel, kills Navot in order to take the vineyard by having people falsely testify that he cursed God. And in a way, Achav is driving away from the pantry, his pantry of avodah zarah, and goes back to God and repents at the end of this perek. One more time with the simon. Achav puts Navot's vineyard in the trunk of his car and drives away from the pantry. We're now going to do a 4-perek back chazar, starting with perek Yud Zayin, in which we use a used car. The used car salesman named Eliyahu announces a drought in front of the pantry. This reminds us how in this perek, Eliyahu says enough is enough, no more rain because of the avodah zarah that Achav brought in. He goes to Nahal Crete to drink water and get food from Orvim, ravens. Then when the river dries up, he goes to a woman and he's sustained by her pantry of oil jar and flour that never runs out, and saves her son from death and brings him back in a way. Now, perek Yud, in which we use a chuppah. A fire descends under a tall chuppah and reaches the top of the mountain. This reminds us, in this perek, Eliyahu is told by God to bring back the rain, and as a standoff with the Nivi'e Baal, where he brings a korban in front of the people, while the Nivi'e Baal are unable to bring a korban, miraculously. Eliyahu does this miraculously, and the people realize that Hashem is the one true God. Perek Yud Tet, in which we use a yacht. Eliyahu flees from Izebel on a yacht and receives a message in the pantry at the sea. This reminds us, in this perek, Izebel says everything's going to be like how it was yesterday, and tries to kill Eliyahu. He then goes to a one-day journey, is completely exhausted. An angel brings him food. He goes to a 40-day journey to Mount Horeb, where God asks him, why are you here? Shows him big symbols, and then has him see God in a still small voice. For God is in the small common occurrences, the small daily occurrences, and not necessarily the big giant acts. Perek Chaf, in which we use a cafe. Achav and the enemy king sit down at the pantry cafe to make a peace treaty. This reminds us, in this perek, Achav, there's the king of Aram, Ben Hadad, which is trying to take over Achav and besieges Shomrom. He's like, everything you have is mine. Achav says, fine, just don't kill us. Then Ben Hadad goes even further, and Achav is like, no, that's too much. They have a war. Achav wins. Then Ben Hadad thinks, let me try to have a war in the valley versus the hills. And Achav still wins. But at the end, Achav and Ben Hadad create a treaty, which is not so good. Now we're going to do a 10-question pop quiz on the Svarim we have learned. In which perek does Adoniyahu build chariots and prepare 50 men to claim the throne behind David's back? Melachim aleph, perek aleph. In which perek does King Asa remove his grandmother Macha from a royal status and burn her Asherah idols? Melachim aleph, perek tet vav. In which perek does Hiram of Tyre cooperate with Shlomo to float massive cedar timber rafts down the coast? Melachim aleph, perek hey. In which perek does Aram claim that Hashem only rules the hills, and this leads to a crushing defeat of them at the plains of Ethek? Melachim aleph, perek chaf. In which perek does Navot refuse to sell his ancestral inheritance, his vineyard, to King Achav, declaring that no, God forbid, Hashem shall forbid it. Melachim aleph, perek chaf aleph. In which perek does Uzzah reach out his hand to balance the tilting aron and pass away instantly for this error? Shmuel bet, perek vav. In which perek does a wise woman stop a siege by delivering the rebel Sheva ben Bichri's head over the city wall? Shmuel bet, perek chaf. In which perek does King Achav humble himself by wearing sackcloth and fasting, delaying the divine dynasty decree that his entire family will be wiped out? Melachim aleph, perek chaf aleph. Shmuel aleph bonus question. In which perek does David cut a corner of Shaul's robe inside a dark cave at En Gedi, but spares his life? Shmuel bet, perek chav dalet. In which perek does a new generation arise that doesn't know Hashem, leading to oppression under regional lords? Shoftim, perek beis. That is it for today. May we be zocha to finish all of Nach, one perek at a time, and remember, day after day, have a wonderful day.